Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby here with the one and only Chip Zien, star of this year's new musical Harmony on Broadway. And this character, Chip, Rabbi, there's something about him that just seems tailor-made for you. And I'm wondering, like, as a performer at this stage in your career, what does it feel like to get this type of dynamic central role that feels so personalized?
You know, it's the role of a lifetime. I can't believe it came along at my advanced age. I kind of had to be this age to play it, so that was part of it. But I was sitting with I didn't know about the show at all, and I was sitting with Danny Burston at Camelot. We went to see Camelot at Lincoln Center. We happened to be sitting next to each other, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm about to start a show called Harmony." And written by Barry Manilow. I said, it's a great part. And I said, have you ever heard of it? Or have you ever heard of the Harmonists? And Danny said, yeah, I did it at La Jolla. I played the rabbi. And I said, oh, he played. So the thing is that the part that they've put in the show, that they wrote into this version of the show, they added in an old guy and split the character into two so that Danny Kornfeld was playing me as a young man. And I had said, like, let's try to cast a wider net in terms of the kinds of roles I was playing as I'm getting older. And I've been playing a lot of rabbis lately. And I thought to my agents, so they were sort of hesitant to send me the script. And when they finally did it, and I read the script, I thought, wow, I mean, this is amazing. So that's how it came. That's how it came about. And it was just thrilling, right? Right from the get-go. And then I thought Barry Manilow. I mean, what's the score going to be? Then I was
Sure.
always joking, like, well, it's going to be Chupa Cabana or what are we going to, what is it? And it was a brilliant period specific score. And the whole thing, it's just been a thrill
Yeah.
right
Uh,
from the get-go.
Well, and because Rabbi is a real life figure from the comedian Harmonists that this show's about,
Yeah.
as you were learning about him, was there one aspect of him that really stuck and you felt like translated into your performance?
I was always trying to remind myself that they were called the comedian harmonists because they were supposed to be funny, and uh, I didn't feel I had to travel too far to play the part. I did eventually meet people who trained with him for their bar mitzvahs. He was Joseph Sakowski ended up in California. A lot of people about my age had kids who trained for their bar mitzvahs with Rabbi Sakowski, the real Rabbi Sakowski, and they loved him, and he sang well into his 90s. But I felt like that I didn't have to go too far to be a guy who loved to sing, who was funny and felt guilty, which was one of the core ingredients of my part. That he should have done something that he didn't do, and that's not a stretch for me. I feel guilty pretty much about everything. So that was so it was so I pretty much kind of just relied on whatever I thought kind of lined up with whatever I brought to the part.
I mean, you're no stranger to creating a role in a new musical and that whole development process.
Yeah.
What, when you're doing that, like, what does that add to the process to have, creators there to pick their brain? In this case,
Arguments.
it,
It adds arguments.
arguments.
I was famous in Falsettos for saying, "Give me a pencil and I'll fix this thing." And Bill Finn, who my one of my dearest and longest friends in showbiz, um, would say, "Okay, go across the street to West Bank. Here's a pencil. You go fix it." It's new. You don't know, and it's Falsettos was really the cornerstone of really everything I did because Bill Finn took me to Lapine, and Lapine it took me to Sondheim, and then all of a sudden this shows up. But it's exciting. You never kind of know what you have. I mean, I famously said to not famously, but I said to Andre Bishop years ago when we first opened March of the Falsettos. this is how arrogant and cocky I was when I was in my 20s. I said, here's a show. I said, we are absolutely not ready to open. This show cannot open yet. I've been in a lot of shows, which I hadn't really. And we are not ready to open. And Andre was basically at the time head of, playwrights and going, nodding. The show opened because Frank Rich happened to be there that night. We didn't know. And he gave the show a great review. I was completely wrong. And we opened. That's how that whole Falsettos thing kind of took off. And I was really wrong, but you just never know. And it's exciting because songs come in, new lines come in, things go flying out. Directors get, they look at a piece of paper and they say I didn't ask for that. That's not the right scene. And they will sometimes, as James Lapine did, maybe tell, not Sondheim so much, but maybe tell Billy to go home and don't hang out in the rehearsal hall. Just go home and write what we need here, And it's a family thing. And when it works, if it works, when it works, it's a miracle. I mean, shows are impossible to write. Actors are tricky. Not me, of course, but a lot of the others. The writers are opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. And and Into the Woods, one of my most favorite scenes when we were creating that show was after the baker gets Little Red Riding Hood out of the wolf's stomach and saves Little Red Riding Hood. There was a scene that used to be in the show where I would walk over to Joanna, and at the end of that scene was that Little Red Riding Hood said, "I'm now moving in with you." And I walk over, I totally ignore that. I walk over to the baker's wife, to Joanna, and I said, "She is not living with us. I cannot stand Little Red Riding Hood." And it was some of the best. It was a really funny scene about how annoyed I was and how annoyed, how annoyed Joanna was with me, that I was completely unwilling to take Little Red Riding Hood into the house. And that scene got cut. And I said to Lapine, I said, "This is like my funniest, I love this scene. You can't cut this scene, cut something else." And, so you have all of that craziness that goes on. And I mean, it's very exciting. Sondheim brings in new songs. In harmony, Bruce had these wonderful lines that you got to say. And then, we would adjust things. And Barry Manilow, who just couldn't have been lovelier, came in and said, "I can change any notes you want. If it's too high, we'll make it lower. If it's too low, we'll make it higher. Stuff is hard to sing." But it's thrilling. You're there when it's born, and it's amazing.
Well, Barry Manilow's score kind of feels like what you're saying, you never know what you're going to get, because as you said, this is not Copacabana.
No,
There's great comedic songs, but there's also, like you have this amazing moment, Threnody, which is this very heartfelt, regretful lament.
Yeah.
What was it like preparing, making sure that you can get through that type of moment 8 shows a week?
No, well, first of all, when I first came on board, we were doing a workshop, and at some point, Warren Carlyle said, "Threnody was really hard to learn. It's incredibly passionate, and vocally, it's very demanding, and so at some point, Warren Carlyle said, "Chip, why don't you want to sing? Let's let everybody hear Threnody." And I really didn't know it, and I was terrified. And so I'm standing there next to the piano, and I sang it for the company that was assembled for this reading, and it was horrible. I mean, I didn't really know it, and I think it was one of the most embarrassing moments in my career. But the sympathetic, fantastic cast that I was with were very understanding, and they were enormously supportive. But I remember thinking, this is exactly like the actor's nightmare that we have, that I have all the time during rehearsals. I mean, this is it. This is what it is. I'm singing a really complicated song for the first time, and I really don't know what the hell I'm doing. as of course, as the show went on, I was worried about losing my voice, or, because I was yelling. It was rangy. It was all
Hmm.
of those things. But as we ran the show, I've somehow found a way to navigate through the whole thing. I mean, and I just, the fact that I was given the honor of performing that song was amazing, and I felt that responsibility. So it was. I think it was difficult to do, but it's again, it's like every actor would long for a magnificent number late in the show.
Sure.
Uh,
Well, you've had, I would love to go back to another show you mentioned because you've had a
yeah,
lot of magnificent numbers.
mm,
I mean, chief among the many great roles you've had is the baker in Into the Woods, which has a special place in my heart. I know, I think that's a musical that just every theater person has some type of connection or that musical has impacted them in some way. What does that feel like now, looking back on that show
I
and
think
seeing the legacy of it?
I think at the time you're sort of involved in the minutia of rehearsals and your role in the larger picture. Like there's famous stories about, like, actors who have a walk on, and then when asked about the show, they say, well, it's all about this doctor who shows up in the second act. But Joanna and I, we rehearsed that show originally downtown at 890 Broadway, and we would drive up 8th Avenue in a cab or what to come home, and and we'd go by the theater, and as the marquee started to go up, uh, this big boot, there was a boot over the marquee, this giant's boot. It just became huge, but I don't think we knew at the time the life that it would have. And I think a lot of that had to do with the great performances video that we made, which in itself
Yeah.
was an amazing experience. I mean, it was like a rock concert, and I don't think we knew. I mean, we had what I was kind of saying before. We had the tensions of creating the show. Um, I know that, like, when we were in San Diego and we did it at the Old Globe, Sondheim ran out at intermission, and when the old man, when the narrator says, like, uh, he didn't say anything. The first act just kind of ended, and people left. They thought the show was over, and Sondheim had to run out of Sondheim had to run out in the parking lot and say, like, there's more. There's a whole nother act. So all those things, no one is alone was not in the show when we first started performing it in San Diego, and all those moments with Sondheim, bringing in No One Is Alone in this dark room in the basement of the Old Globe and spreading out these huge charts all over the piano. In the old days, nobody used a tablet. They had, the music was written accordion style on 30 pages of manuscript paper, and Sondheim sang it, and we're all in there going, like, can't believe, this is unbelievable. I mean, even when, like, getting the keys set, and we went to Sondheim's house sometimes to, like, for No One Is Alone, or for No More, and so you're sitting there with Steve, and
Hmm.
he's putting the song in D flat. He said, I think this is, how do you feel? I think this is good. And I'm from Milwaukee, as I always say. I thought, like, I can't even believe I'm here. I mean, it's like, so it I've had so much good luck, and nothing beats this, what has happened with harmony. I mean, I it's stunning that this happened at this point in my life.
And Harmony marks 50 years since your Broadway debut. That's a
Yeah.
pretty incredible career to be able to span 5 decades like that on
Yeah.
Broadway. And you've seen, iconic shows. You've been involved with shows that, like Merrily, speaking of Sondheim, which had took such a long time to get to Broadway. Now it's the hottest ticket. Who would have
And
thunk? But in that,
I got to do Merrily in La Jolla.
yeah.
Uh, I always regretted that it didn't come back. We were the first revival after it had been on Broadway, which, is good. Really close friends with Lonnie Price and all those guys, Walton, they're all pals. And then suddenly they thought we were a little bit older. The characters that when we did Merrily, we were older than Lonnie and Walton and Jason Alexander and that whole crowd. And so, and we thought it would, I thought yeah, the fact that that didn't come back was a huge disappointment. But I love that show and I love the production that I just saw Here Now and Lonnie's movie and what it means to everybody who's done it or loves it and that score and yeah. So I forgot what was the question. I forgot what we're talking.
Oh, I
You
was
see,
just listening to you
I'm
talking about
riding I'm
Merrily.
riding off the rails. I'm
Well,
lost.
that's okay. I was just wondering, like, now that you can look back on this career, you've had this amazing moment with Harmony, and you're no longer involved in, the minutia
Yeah,
of those shows that have become classics. What's kind of the greatest lesson you've learned over that time, if you can look back
I think
about this theater community?
you know, I think it's so much fun is what I would tell young actors. It can be. It can be horribly tense and nerve-wracking, but it's I never worked in an office a day in my life. I did sell shoes for a moment. I sold shoes on 50th and Broadway. And I closed the store to go on an audition for You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. It was the very first how I got my equity card. And the owner of the shoe store was waiting for me when I came back. He said, Zion, you don't close a store at lunch hour, okay? And he said, you're not an actor, are you? Are you trying to be an actor? And I said, yeah. And I got fired. But the sweep of I feel like I just never, the thing is, I got to meet all these people and get to know them really well. And I don't, I look back on it and I still find it, I was going to be a lawyer. I went to school to be a lawyer and suddenly, I was still applying to law school like 5 years after I was working in New York and I had my equity card, I was in SAG and I was still applying to law schools until the University of Wisconsin, which was my safety valve, said, we no longer doubt your sincerity. I mean, but 50 years, I hate being this old. I, I, I hate it. And because there's nothing more fun than hanging out with young actors backstage in a show, Broadway, off Broadway, anywhere, because they're fun. It's a fun group of people. The other thing I think I've learned is to be careful in tech rehearsals when you think you're all alone on stage and you think nobody's listening to you. You should never insult the writer or the director who may be sitting out in that black void out there in the audience and you didn't realize they were there. So you have to be very careful. So that's another tip I like to give to younger actors. Be careful. I was in the back. Well, this is terrible. I was with cast members in the bathroom at the Duke Rehearsal Studios on 42nd Street, and I was talking about the meanest people we ever met in show business. And I was criticizing a famous book writer of, for example, Gypsy and director. And I had all the other actors laughing, and out of the stall walked that person whose name I shouldn't mention. And he said, you're one person who will never work for me. Okay, let's just make
Wow.
that clear. Okay, sir, you will never be in one of my shows. That, by the way, that didn't prove to be true, but so be careful when you're standing on stage in a dark theater in tech rehearsals. That's a tip. And also, I was not, I didn't really have everybody's so well trained now. They all go to conservatories.
Mhm.
I was seriously on my way to law school. I mean, I acted in college, but it was really something I wasn't sure I was going to do. So I came to New York. I thought like, well, I got a job right away. I got that Charlie Brown thing. And the next thing I know, I'm off and running, but I really didn't know anything. And I think the training is important, and it's completely different than when I got here. It's much easier to get a foothold. And not, I mean, now everybody's, got an MFA. And what it was that, is that, what was that? What did I learn?
Yes, but
I learned,
I think that's a lot.
I think I
And
learned that I can't imagine having done anything else. And also, but, I have two kids. I do think another thing I learned that it can be difficult to keep your ship afloat by going into an audition room and trying to make people laugh or cry or think that that's tricky. But I loved every minute of it. I feel unbelievably lucky that this happened to me.
well, I think everyone in the theater community feels very lucky you didn't become that lawyer and give us these performances. So thank you so much, Chip, for sitting down with me, and everyone who's out there watching. Make sure you stay with Gold Derby the rest of this season. Chip, thank you again.
Gold Derby scares me. Sam, thank you so much. It was lovely to talk to you. Thank you.